How are you all doing today, everybody? ArtificialDragon reporting, and I have a very different video for you guys today. As you probably saw from the title, I will be talking about which Lantern Corp's numerous monsters from the Godzilla franchise would fit in. If this seems familiar, then that is because this topic was inspired by Nino Mouse Productions' videos related to lanterns. He had recently expanded on the cast of the Dragon Prince and which corps they would fit under. And in respect to that, I'm going with a franchise I grew up with. Hope you guys enjoy. As most of you can or can't tell, there are a lot of monsters in Toho's roster. For now, I will be sticking with the big 5 most popular monsters. These include Rodan, Mechagodzilla, King Ghidorah, Mothra, and the subject of this video, the Big G himself. Godzilla really needs no introduction. He is a cultural icon. Even if you haven't seen the films, you have likely heard of him at least once. To emphasize how famous Godzilla is, he has taken a place in the Hollywood Hall of Fame alongside the likes of Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny. Though, for those that live underneath a rock, I'll explain. Godzilla first appearing in the 1954 film of the same name was created by Tomoyuki Tanaka, Ashiro Honda, and Eiji Tsuburaya as the metaphor of the horrors of nuclear warfare. So obviously something much more deeper than a simple B-movie monster. Despite that dark origin of the character, he has become so popular he has starred in 35 movies, 3 of them made by Hollywood, numerous video games, novels, TV shows, and even on the pages of Marvel. That's right, Godzilla is officially part of the same universe that has the Avengers and Jonah Jameson. Though there is much more to his story, I'm not going to get sidetracked. Godzilla, put shortly, has gone through many changes. He's been a bad guy, a good guy, and everything in between, so there is plenty of potential to explore Godzilla's character while looking at each Lantern Corps. So, let's get this train rolling. The Green Lanterns are the most widely known of the corps, at least to the casual viewer. They are comprised of individuals with extraordinary amounts of willpower, which usually means overcoming great fear and is one of the most difficult of the emotional spectrum to master. Godzilla obviously possesses a great deal of willpower, because he has dealt with many different opponents, even ones larger and more powerful than he is. On top of that, Godzilla has handled some serious crap throughout his entire career, such as tanking several black holes to the face, surviving an absolute zero weapon, running a gauntlet with multiple kaiju in a row after he was released from the Antarctic ice for several decades, and worst of all, dealing with the abomination known as Minya. Nah, just kidding. Sure, his healing factor does help more times than not, but he has taken so much abuse you think it would at the very least deter him. But Godzilla isn't one to back down so easily. Knock him down and he'll always get right back up and come out on top despite the impossible odds. Heck, he has gone through literal hell, where he has faced numerous obstacles, including a doppelganger of himself that looks like a giant version of a thing, a literal storm of human corpses, demonized versions of his best friends, and constructs of 2 of his most dangerous opponents who literally cannot die. Though most dramatically of all, in order to escape hell and get past a gate guardian, Godzilla willingly allows himself to get devoured by a swarm of hellbats right down to the bone, also he could possess them to produce a new body with the power to overcome the guardian. That, I gotta admit, is hardcore, and gives a lot of credence of Godzilla's enormous pool of willpower. In the MonsterVerse movies, he is basically over a millennia years old, which I'm pretty sure is the monster equivalent of a World War II veteran. And despite his highly advanced age, he was able to defeat a pair of parasitic species known as the Mutos, and later down the line his arch-rival King Ghidorah. So yeah, Godzilla has no shortage of determination and Green would match him pretty well. Though I don't believe this is the most defining trait of Godzilla. If you are to become a member of a Green Lantern Corps, there are numerous rules put in place by the Guardians. The most important one that you have to follow is not to use lethal force or use your power for selfish means, which is what Godzilla is known to do from his very inception, and even with that aside, he is known to be a maverick, not answering to any higher power and plays by his own rules. To prove his point, when Godzilla was sent to Purgatory, he was approached by God to join his army of heaven. But Godzilla being, well, Godzilla refuses, and is banished to hell. Now don't get me wrong, the King of the Monsters has the willpower, plenty of it, but he really isn't a fit for the Green Lantern Corps, as he is more about enforcing his own rules than following anyone else. The Blue Lantern Corps are arguably the strongest emotion of all, though it is reliant on willpower, which in conjunction can be used to overpower fear, greed, and rage. Blue Lanterns are usually chosen when they inspire great hope to those around them, or they simply held onto hope through dark times. This sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? How on earth can a symbol of nuclear warfare inspire hope? Well, Godzilla, just like any other character who has been around for half a century, has gone through many characteristics and incarnations. While originally a bad guy, Godzilla was eventually drawn to the side of good, protecting the Earth from extraterrestrial monsters alongside the likes of Mothra, Rodan, and many others. In Final Wars, when the planet was invaded by aliens and their mind-controlled army of monsters, the last remnants of humanity saw Godzilla as their best chance to combat against the threat, albeit begrudgingly. As seen again in King of the Monsters, Godzilla was worshipped by ancient civilizations as a god to the point of them creating a temple in his honor, where he rests in from time to time. This was proof enough for Dr. Serizawa that humanity and the Titans can coexist peacefully and benefit from one another. In the end, he was proven correct, as Godzilla and his subjects provided plenty of improvements throughout the entire world by their mere presence alone. While it's true that many consider Godzilla a hero and protector of a planet, that sentiment really isn't shared by everyone. The world's governments see him as dangerous as any other rabid animal or natural disaster. Sure, he does inspire when the chips are down, but he's more of a necessary evil than anything else, and his origins are pretty clear he wasn't meant to be an inspiration of hope at all. Although as shown through his more benevolent incarnations, Godzilla can't be entirely excluded from hope, but he really doesn't fit the criteria as he is hated more than he is liked. The Orange Lanterns are one of the few that really don't count as a core, because everyone who embraced the orange light have fought amongst themselves not wanting to share their power, leaving only one, and that is Larfleeze. If it isn't obvious already, the Orange Lanterns are powered by avarice, or extreme greed. While they obtain extraordinary power that all the cores combined pale in comparison to, it causes its user to be consumed by that power and have the urge to own everything. While Godzilla does possess the common characteristics contributed to dragons of ancient European mythologies and other medias, he really doesn't possess a sense of greed. We don't exactly see him sleeping amongst a pile of riches like Smaug has in the Hobbit movies. Though I suppose the closest thing he has to greed is his need to feed on nuclear energy. But that isn't exactly his fault, as he needs the substance to survive. One possible exception I could find is in Godzilla Earth from the anime trilogy. Unlike in other incarnations, where he simply attacks humanity when provoked and then leaves after everything is said and done, Godzilla Earth has devastated the human race to the point where he forced them to begin an exodus to another home beyond the Earth. With his competition gone, Godzilla went on to transform the entire ecosystem of a planet to his own design, with his DNA providing the foundation. Even after humanity returned 20,000 years later, he was still dead set on destroying them on sight. Now it could be argued that Godzilla isn't really being greedy, as he is an animal and is simply congregating, but numerous times it has been observed that he displays human-like behavior and intelligence. Now that I think about it, Even when Godzilla fights against potential planet-destroying threats, it could be more out of self-interest rather than out of the goodness of his heart. Guess Godzilla has a bit of greed in him after all. The Indigo Tribe is unique among the other lanterns of the emotional spectrum. While it is required for members of the other corps to possess a great amount of the emotion that applies to that organization, the Indigo Tribe, on the other hand, are very different, as their rings are parasitic in nature. What this means is that when wielded by those that lack compassion, such as, say, a murder-crazy psychopath, then they are forced to feel nothing but compassion and remorse for their malicious actions. Though if it is wielded by someone who possesses great compassion, then it works as normally as any other lantern ring. Godzilla does show a great deal of compassion throughout his long life. He has shown it toward humanity and even to a robot. This is really emphasized in his relationship toward his sons. Despite having no genetic relationship, he still cares for them and even protects them from other dangerous monsters. Though this could be counted more toward love than compassion, but we'll get more into that later. In the Monsterverse, Godzilla, unlike in most other incarnations, doesn't simply destroy everything in his path, causing as little collateral damage as possible, and even when he destroys man-made structures, it was usually unintentional. Heck, even when he was followed by several United States Navy vessels in the same movie, he doesn't seem bothered by them, almost appearing like they are going into war together. In King of the Monsters, when Godzilla assumes control of the Titans from King Ghidorah, he makes sure that his subjects don't attack any human cities. One might interpret this as Godzilla trying to be a good kaiju king, but he could feel compassion toward humanity after knowing the role Dr. Sarazawa played in his eventual recovery from the oxygen destroyer. Though, that is pure speculation on my part. For certain incarnations that are counted as truly malevolent, on the other hand, then he can certainly count as a member of the Indigo Tribe. As mentioned previously, the Indigo Ring forces compassion onto the individual that lacks any empathy at all. But aside from that, Godzilla isn't exactly known for his compassion. Unlike other Lantern Corps, which are named after the color of their given emotional spectrum, the Violet Lanterns are instead called the Star Sapphires. Love is arguably the most difficult power to master, as without great discipline and control, the wielder can lose control of their actions. Members of the Star Sapphires are those that understand true love, whether it is through loss or gain. This emotion would seem very contradictory to Godzilla superficially, since he is literally an engine of destruction and is representative of the darker aspects of nature. Though much like the previously mentioned compassion, Godzilla has shown a great amount of love to those close to him. The most obvious ones are toward his sons throughout their various incarnations. While I did joke earlier about Manila being an abomination of nature, despite that, Godzilla still took the young monster underneath his wing and even taught him how to use the atomic breath. His role as a loving and caring father was cemented when the island they were living on became buried in snow and ice, and they attempted to leave. The poor guy wasn't strong enough to keep up with his father, and instead of leaving the young monster to his fate, the normally stern Godzilla returned and held his son so that they could hibernate together. This love does carry over to his next incarnation, where Godzilla raises a much more adorable baby Godzilla, who later manages to turn into a sub-adult Godzilla who, thankfully, looks just like his father. His love toward his son is so strong that when his more powerful clone Space Godzilla kidnapped him, he went through hell and back to kill his doppelganger and free his kid. In the following movie, Godzilla vs. Destroyer, while the former was literally going through a nuclear meltdown, all he wanted to do was be with his kid. But even that was taken away from him when Destroyer killed Junior. God damn, Godzilla just can't catch a break. He even attempts to revive his dying son, and when that fails, he is visibly grief-stricken over it just like any parent would. I don't mean to tug your heartstrings even further, but even in the new movie when Mothra sacrifices herself to save her king, Godzilla seemed to roar out in grief. Fortunately, she had imparted her life energy onto Godzilla to become the awesome Burning Godzilla. With Mothra's spirit inside of him, Godzilla was able to overcome and murder his queen's killer. Sweet, sweet revenge. So while there is enough love for Godzilla to qualify as a member of the Star Sapphires, there is a simple complication in the fact that the Corps is dominated mostly by female individuals. Though there have been exceptions, I don't think the Star Sapphires would suit Godzilla all that well. I mean, honestly, could you imagine Godzilla wearing pink? Actually, don't do that. I don't want to see that. Now, this next entry is really interesting, as this Corps isn't technically part of the emotional spectrum, as the Black Lanterns are symbolic of a total absence of emotion and life, quite literally, as a majority of its members are corpses brought back by the Black Lantern rings, basically becoming sentient zombies. But instead of feeding on brains, they feed on the emotions of their victims. Though unlike the other Lantern Corps where the members wield the power of the emotion they are bound to, the rings possess and take control of their actions. Pretty much anyone who is dead, either villain or hero, can become a Black Lantern. There's really no distinction. One exception is Black Hand, a supervillain who is utterly obsessed with death itself, as when he was brought back to life, he retained his free will. While he does represent the very nature of nuclear warfare and has killed thousands, if not millions of people in his wake, Godzilla isn't exactly one that worships death itself, as he is usually destroying those that wronged him out of vengeance or simply collateral damage from him just by being there. Though he can undoubtedly become a member of the Black Lanterns, as he has been killed and resurrected plenty of times. Particularly, there is one incarnation of Godzilla that can fit into the Black Lantern Corps, and that is the GMK incarnation. Unlike a majority of Godzillas before and after, this Godzilla is basically a reanimated corpse that is powered by the vengeful souls that died during World War II. Heck, he is arguably the most malevolent incarnation of Godzilla to date, and he does look the part of a Black Lantern, especially with those soulless eyes. Though aside from this incarnation of a character, any other Godzilla wouldn't really be part of the Black Lantern Corps, unless they were already dead, that is. However, there are other Corps that really suit Godzilla better than death. Going straight from death and onto life, much like its counterpart, life doesn't count as part of the emotional spectrum. But without life, we can't really have emotion. Funny how that works, huh? The members of a White Lantern Corps are basically there to spread life throughout the universe and extinguish death's hold on it. Though an alternative to become a member of this Corps is mastering all 7 colors of the emotional spectrum, which is exactly what happened with Kyle Rayner and led to the creation of a White Lantern Corps. Godzilla, as we all know, is basically a personification of nuclear warfare and is mostly recognized through his destructive actions. So why does he fit better with the White Lanterns than the Black Lanterns, you may ask? Well, put simply, while Godzilla is a product of humanity's dark desires, he also does represent the forces of nature, almost akin to a hurricane or earthquake. He is literally a driving force behind putting the natural order back into balance, having to fight against creatures much more malevolent than himself. In the more recent movies, with the Crown of the King of the Monsters returned, Godzilla and the Titans can bring about new life and even putting many endangered species off of a list. While Godzilla in instances presents himself as an avatar of the natural order and protects everything in it, he really isn't that balanced with all of his emotions, which kind of disqualifies him from the White Lantern Corps. The Red Lanterns are probably one of the youngest of the Corps to come into existence, but despite that, they are far from harmless. Members of the Red Lanterns are powered by extreme rage, to the point that it is barely controllable, and the Corps is comprised mostly of already primal individuals. Out of the emotional spectrum explained thus far, Godzilla fits rage pretty much to a T. He is angry at the world, angry at buildings, angry at those that oppose him, angry at monsters that have previously bested him, and more importantly, he is always angry by the darker aspects of humanity. Sure, there are some incarnations of Godzilla that seem very reserved about their anger, but a majority always have plenty of rage and lashes out at pretty much anything around them with the fury of an atom bomb. His entire origin is even defined by rage, as Godzilla was in a colony with other members of his species living in relative peace in the Bikini Atoll. That is, until the hydrogen bomb testing destroyed his habitat and killing his entire family. On top of that, it also mutated him into the monster we all know and love today. This is shared with the origins of other Godzillas with slight differences apart from the MonsterVerse Godzilla, but even then he is defined by his rage. Even if we take away his origin in the movies, we should keep in mind that he was created as an unstoppable force of nature, akin to the fury of a hurricane or a tornado. This is evident in Godzilla's fighting styles as well. While he is usually known for his atomic breath, he almost always prefers to fight up close and personal with an almost unstoppable ferocity and brutality, causing as much damage to his enemies as possible. This keeps in line with members of the Red Lanterns who allow themselves to be consumed by rage during a fight, even feeding from another's anger. Though despite appearances, the Red Lanterns aren't evil, as they seek vengeance on those that they believe deserve it while protecting the innocent. Or as much as a rage-fueled monster can, anyway. This is probably one of the few corps that I undeniably think Godzilla would be able to join without question, as his entire life has been motivated entirely by anger, and it does appear to be his dominant emotion. However, there is but one other that I think he fits more into. Now, as you can figure from the process of elimination, the next emotion is fear. Founded and named after the former Green Lantern, Sinestro, the Sinestro Corps are the exact opposites of the Green Lanterns. Whereas the previously mentioned Corps are fueled by willpower, members of the Yellow Lanterns are powered by fear and are distinguished by their ability to cause great fear amongst those around them. Godzilla's mere presence inspires fear to those smaller and weaker than him. Heck, even some of his greatest enemies seem to fear him one way or another. Though fear does qualify for any form of giant monster, as their mere presence is enough to cause people to run in a blind panic. But do keep in mind that Godzilla was originally created to symbolize the horrors of nuclear warfare, which is something we still fear to this very day. Godzilla is so widely feared by both humanity and those that try to invade the planet that both have created and used numerous weapons to try and kill him, such as the Oxygen Destroyer, Mechagodzilla, anti-nuclear bacteria, an artificial black hole, and so on. Heck, Even when Godzilla is saving the world, most of the humans that admire him still muse that it is a good thing that he is on their side, at least for the time being. So, as you can tell, aside from the Red Lantern Corps, I believe the Sinestro Corps would be the other best fit for Godzilla, given how much fear he already inflicts on those around him. Though one itsy bitsy problem is that just like the Green Lanterns, Godzilla would have to follow rules set upon him by an authority figure, which in this case is Sinestro, who rules his Corps like a tyrant. Though aside from that conflict of personalities, I do believe Godzilla fits into the Yellow Lanterns to a T. In fact, I could see Godzilla eventually growing the nerve to challenge Sinestro for the right to take over as the leader of the Yellow Lanterns. Though I don't think Godzilla would emerge victorious, as Sinestro knows the ins and outs of Yellow Lantern rings and would most likely depower Godzilla, but it would still be interesting to watch. So that is the rundown of which Lantern Corps Godzilla fits the most under. Though I am aware there is a new corps in the comics called the Ultraviolet Lanterns, and by the time of this video's release, not much is really known about them aside from perhaps being powered by shame. Though even if that is the case, Godzilla really doesn't show a whole lot of shame throughout his entire film career. Maybe some, but once again, that is pure speculation. Next time, we will be focusing on yet another popular Toho monster, and I'm sure you guys can already guess who it is. Anyway, this video shouldn't be taken as gospel, as it is all just my opinion. If you have a different view on which core Godzilla would fit better under, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And as always, fly with me, fellow dragons. Until next time.